morning, everybody. We're experiencing a little frostiness this morning. We'll be with you in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I'm your host. Sam Chase is here as my co-host. Bob Hoey has some other commitments this morning. We will miss him. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, we have Chelmsford Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Jay Lang, coming in at the 7 o'clock mark. I have lots of questions. Do you have lots of questions?
No medical questions. He's not a pill-giving doctor. He's a PhD doctor. Okay, so.
Yeah, we could ask him if his PhD is in education and what he did his thesis on.
Yeah.
Well,
no, yeah,
I'm sure.
I don't know what his. You can ask him about his thesis.
I'm sure about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, chilly this morning. When I got in my car, it said it was 9 degrees. So, and also when I got in my car, I'm over 260,000 miles. So we joked about that. Glenn and I joked about that last night because I put it on Facebook, and I've got quite a number of responses. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
What, on the car?
On the car. I mean, I took a picture of the odometer.
You take a page out of Tom Cristiano's book?
Well, not quite, because I don't do it often. I have a 2008 Honda Odyssey. It has over 260,000 miles on it. I do a lot of driving. Of course, I've had it a long time. And I I have found,
You bought it new, right?
yes.
Okay.
We bought it with, I think, under 100 miles on it. So Glenn has changed the oil faithfully over all those years.
Using synthetic oil.
Well, that's because of whatever was required.
Well,
And,
Glenn would use the best oil available at the time.
right,
That's
because
what
he
would
always
do.
did.
Right.
Because that's what he's always done with every vehicle he has had and that we have owned.
I've done the same.
Yeah, so, I mean, cars are kind of interesting. I always thought they were. I learned how to drive on a 1956 Chevy convertible when I was 12,
Beautiful car.
because I was always tall. So they didn't know if I was 12 or 16. And my uncle taught me how to drive, and it was a stick shift, just in case
3 on the column.
anybody wanted to know, yeah. So, and I never really thought too much of it. Of course, by the time I got to 16 and was learning, on a stick shift on the column, the clutch was tight. It was tricky on my parents' car, and that was the Dodge Dart, the one that Glenn said that he saw a picture of my parents' house and said, that's a Dodge Dart in the, in the driveway. And
The
I said,
clutch, I've got a 65 Dart with a standard shift, and the clutch is, if it's new and it's adjusted properly, it grabs at about an inch off the floor. So it is tight. You're absolutely right.
yeah, and I'm remembering this from when I was
Yep,
16 and I'm
that's pretty good.
73. And they owned a Rambler at one point. That was a little bit, there was a lot of, it was looser. But my parents were limited in how they communicated how to teach me how to drive. So I think that it could have been better, but I didn't have a problem. I got my license.
My father, when I was 11, we were down at the old DPW in Concord, which had extensive back dirt roads. And he put me in the driver's seat and he said, drive. That was the sum total of my instruction.
Well, that wasn't mine.
Well, he did, that's what he did. He was from the push them out of the nest and see if they could fly school, and he would watch us kids, and he would make a determination as to whether or not, we were paying attention to whatever was going on, and at the point he thought that we had looked and observed enough without saying anything, he'd say to himself, okay, he's been watching, he knows how to do it, and then he'd just say, do it, right? And I don't recommend that really as a way of teaching, but I'll say one thing. What I have learned as a result of that, and what I've tried to do with my own children and family, is that if you're trying to teach them something that is a little bit, requires a little bit of skill or so forth, what you don't do is you don't start off with a long narrative about how difficult it is to do.
Yeah, because it
And that-
scares you.
That's right, and that's the one thing my father, his approach was good. So he never said, oh, now, be careful, this is really difficult, you can't, because that's intimidating. I mean, if he just says, do it, you sit there and you think, okay, and you're not really thinking, oh, this is really hard, or it's got, And I've learned that actually is a very good approach, because you don't want to set people up for failure by saying that the task is too hard or too difficult to master, so.
Well, that's approach to teaching. I mean, since we're going to have a superintendent of schools in, and I used to be a teacher, and I guess once you're a teacher, always a teacher, you live with one. There's a lot of method. That's why you have to take a methods course. I don't know if you still do.
I did when I was in college.
You took a methods of teaching course?
Well, I had, at the time, and the law was a lot different in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts, believe it or not, when I was in college, had not a large requirement for a number of education courses to be certified. You only had to take 12 hours, okay? And the 12 hours certified you in, I remember this, I don't know why I remember this, but the 12 hours certified you in 26 states, okay? That was the requirement. So in Massachusetts, to get your teaching thing, they concentrated more on the subject matter. They wanted you to have more knowledge about the area that you were teaching in, and you only had to take a number of education courses limited to, so that you could carry out your duty. And The two I remember that I had to take, one was a methods course, which is basically how do you teach it? All right, whatever it is you're teaching, how do you do that? And the other was, three I remember. Methods, Ed Psych,
Yep,
and History of Education,
yes.
which I hated. I thought, and I'm a history guy, but I thought that was
Well, that was one of
horrible.
my easiest courses.
Yeah, it is easy, but.
I mean, when you go to get a major in chemistry, a lot of stuff
Yeah.
is really easy.
So, I mean,
Then
I
you ask
didn't,
yourself why.
I didn't know chemistry was tough, but I didn't.
I mean, I wasn't super great, but I did get a degree in it, and I
Yeah,
worked on
yes,
my
you did.
master's degree. My master's, I thought was easier. Getting A's in masters was easy.
Well,
Trying
I didn't
to
set out.
make it on the undergraduate level was definitely a challenge.
It is
I
hard.
had fun in school.
Yeah.
Every day I loved school, had a good time.
Well, I liked school too, to a certain extent, but it was always a challenge.
College is tough.
So
for
as far
me.
as driving is concerned, they used to let me wash the car, wash the limo. And the deal was, you could wash the limo, but there was a skirt on the back of the car. So I got to back the car up a half a spin on the wheel. So
How
one
old were
day-
you?
So
You're-
I could,
How old were you?
15,
Okay,
14.
gotta set the stage.
So they let me back the car up just to get that dirty part that was covered by the skirt exposed so I could take the Brillo pad and take care of it. My Uncle Eddie, my granduncle Eddie, my grandfather's brother, we enjoyed each other's company. So he says, come on, kid, we'll go for a ride. So he had a brand spanking new Cadillac, gray car, it was beautiful. And we had to get out of Lawrence for something, but Uncle Eddie always brought me because he'd leave me in the car because they wouldn't tow the car if I was in it. And he'd say, look, kid, just don't get out of the car. I don't care what the cop says. Don't get out of the car. You don't have permission to get. Don't get out of the car. And he took me down the train station, and we had a lot of fun. And the cops would get wicked angry because I wouldn't get out of the car.
Why did they want you to get out of the car?
They wanted to tow the car.
Oh, okay.
It was in a place where it shouldn't have been.
All right, I got it. Parked on
So
the
we get on to
loading.
Lawrence. I think we went down for an ice cream cone. And he said, hey, kid, you want to drive home? I said, yeah, I'd love to. Give it a shot. So we start off in the big parking lot down in Lawrence that's empty. And I'm driving around there. Okay, kid, I think you're good to go. So we pull out onto the main drag, get on 495. I'm rocketing down 495. We get to, what the heck, the exit for the low connector. And I'm doing 65. I didn't know you had to slow down for the exits.
Uh-oh. That's not good.
So my Uncle Eddie says, oh boy, you gotta slow down for the exits. And he says, we gotta stop at the house, I gotta change my pants.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Good old
sure
Uncle Eddie, he was a good guy. We had a lot of
What's
smiles,
the,
a lot of laughs.
What's the oldest car you've ever driven?
Oldest,
car?
Oldest.
Wait a
by-
minute,
By,
so-
by year of manufacture, oldest car you've ever driven.
at the time it was old.
Oh,
Currently it's old, or what, at the
no,
time?
the oldest car by year, I mean, have you ever driven like a 1920 Model
No.
A4? Okay, all right, okay. So
No.
the oldest car you've ever driven. What, do you remember?
Probably the one I got. Because in terms of age
No.
of the vehicle,
In terms of year.
Year
of
of make?
Year of manufacture, right.
probably my husband's aunt's 1983 Malibu,
Okay,
because we currently own it.
yes.
Well,
you
he
still-
owns
you
it.
Still have the car.
And then, because all of the other vehicles would not lie in your qualifications.
Okay, so the oldest car I've ever driven was a 1916 Pierce Arrow.
Yeah, but you do these things with cars, and I don't.
No, but I'm just asking, what's the
It's,
oldest
well, it's
car?
a matter of discussion.
Right.
Yeah, and I really have never driven a truck. Now, John was going down memory lane. I mean, we all have them. When I was in kindergarten, we used to have show and tell. So one of the
They
days,
still do.
well, they have it a lot of times. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying, because if I was 5, that was a long time ago.
Question for Sam.
Oh, I've seen this.
Good morning. A great program in TV is the Make-A Auto Auction. Has Mr. Chase ever seen it? Yes, I have.
So have
watch
I.
it. I watch it regularly.
Even I've watched
I'll
that.
tell you something about the Make-'em, just very quickly, the Make-'em auction. I mean, if you just tune in, you really don't know how it works. The cars are beautiful. I mean, they put them up on the screen and they're all dolled up and everything. But you have to be careful when you bid and buy on those cars, which is why you really want to be there. You don't want to do it over the TV, because
Telephone
a
and
lot of them,
yeah.
a lot of them are not mechanically up to snuff. I mean, a lot are, obviously, but some aren't. And
Oh, is
they're-
that why they push them
and,
out onto the
well, no, 'cause-
platform?
well, they don't want to, well, I don't know, could be, I
I
suppose.
think it's the exhaust fumes.
Yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, they really don't want to run the engine inside. But you do, if you're bidding on the Make-'em cars over the TV, you really have to be careful, because I do know of many instances where people have kind of gotten stuck on some of those vehicles. But when you look at them, they're absolutely gorgeous. They're always all dolled up and spiffed up and so forth, so.
So anyway, when I was 5 and in kindergarten, when we had show and tell, one of the days I had asked my uncle if he would take the oil truck and park it, and then all the kids would go to the window and we waved at him.
Oil truck, meaning a truck that delivers fuel oil to your
Yeah.
house? Okay.
He worked for Roby Fuel in Quincy, Massachusetts, as a truck driver. In World War II, he also worked on trucks in the Philippines. So even though he tried to branch out,
He knew his trucks.
he knew his trucks. I have some of his papers and some of the different courses and things that he had where he was getting A's and A pluses. For whatever reason, why he never got a different kind of a job is beyond me. But he drove trucks, and he retired from Roby Fuels also.
He probably enjoyed what he was doing.
Yeah, and he was outside and whatever. But anyway, and then on weekends, if he was working or on vacation, sometimes he would take me along with him, which was an experience to sit in the cab of that truck, which I really liked. But a short time after all of that, then they had some policy that said you can't take your kids with you. So that that went by the wayside. But it's interesting with the memories, because one
So
of
they
the...
could tow the truck.
No, they weren't towing the
They knew
truck.
my Uncle Eddie's
They
secret.
let, Evelyn had to stay in the truck.
And the other thing that they could do, which I suppose, well, of course, my uncle's long dead. They can't sue him, and they can't sue any of the rest of us. He would take, in the back of the truck, you lift up the back of the truck, and that's where the hose was, that's where the meter was, that was the whole thing, it generated whatever the bill was. But at the end of the day, what he would do would be to unscrew all of that, take it off, and the extra oil that was left in the truck, either he put it in my mother's tank or he put it in my grandmother's house. Of course, at that point, it was like 6 cents a gallon, so it wasn't like it was a lot of money.
Yeah, even in inflated dollars, it was, as a percentage, your fuel was cheaper back then, so.
Oh,
yeah,
definitely,
yeah,
because
there's no-
it keeps along with whatever your cost of living is.
No question.
But
So-
it's interesting what you remember. So one thing's going to lead to another here, obviously, this morning. So we talked about the cars, which I thought was interesting. Again, some people want to know when I'm getting rid of the Honda Odyssey, and it still drives fine.
You might as well keep it.
260,000 mile car you have?
I have a 260,000
260.
plus.
It's time.
However,
Not if it's still running and you,
It's-
it was, the engine is fine.
yeah, keep it.
I have brand-new tires.
If you want to throw away $1,000, keep it.
I haven't done anything like that. When we get to that point, it will go, because I had a 1995 Windstar. Not the second version of the 95, but the first one. And the problem with that 1995 Windstar was the valves and what is it, the engine block or whatever the thing was. It was made out of aluminum and it shouldn't have been. Anyway, and so the
But you had a lot of miles on that vehicle.
yeah, because it stopped working. The odometer stopped working after 120,000 miles.
Okay, so you,
And it was screwy. So the electrical stuff in that was definitely screwy after 100,000 miles. However, we're at a bigger number here, and I'm finding that there is some issues with the electrical components in the car. They don't like the cold. So the doors, it's a van.
Electrics degrade over time.
Well, you
Because-
think? Plus the fact
Yeah.
that the display sometimes turns yellow, sometimes it's white, sometimes it's yellow.
time for a new car. Evan.
So I do have an issue with some of the doors, the automatic doors opening. So I had that before, and then Glenn did something and it fixed it. So we'll see where it goes. I am not opposed to buying a new vehicle, but it's kind of interesting having a car that's over 260,000 miles.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, everyone likes a new car, obviously, and when I was younger, I
don't wanna pay for
felt
it.
that. But what I've learned over the years is, as long as the body holds up, you can keep them forever, because the mechanical stuff can be fixed. I mean, as long as you can find parts, okay? But when the body starts to go, especially with the cars today, they're not body-on-frame cars, they're unibody, okay? And when those start to rot, especially the structural members under the car, you really have to get rid of it, because in a unibody car, the entire body and the shell and the underneath, that's all part of the structural integrity of the car, as opposed to the old-fashioned car that has like a ladder frame and you put the body on top. That's different. But with the cars today, once the body starts to go, especially on the underside, you can't really repair it properly. You have to get rid of it.
Well, right
you know?
now, the vehicle is
So,
in pretty good shape.
yeah, it is.
I mean, I'd like a new windshield again, because with
Yeah, but
all of the highway driving.
Insurance will pay for that.
Well, it's pitted. So
They'll pay for that.
usually
Yeah.
what happens is by this time something's going to hit I'm not going to do this. I'm not saying that I'm doing this, by the way. But sometimes what has happened in the past, by the time I need new one, if a rock or a pebble or something on the highway hits it, it'll crack it, because it'll hit one of those pits and it's thinner. And then you get the little crack. And we've had the cracks filled in the past. Safe flight. I mean,
I had a repair on my Impala. I think I had the car, and I bought it used, but I think I had it like 3 weeks, and I got this little rock on the thing, and I took it to Safe Flight, and they said, "Oh, we can fix that. We don't have to replace the windshield." And I said, "That's fine."
I think you both
So,
enjoyed the luxury of having a home mechanic. So if something's not working, you bring it home and you gripe to somebody in the house and they'll fix it for you. I don't know how to fix a car. I don't want to learn how to fix a car.
and that's perfectly fine.
And I'll go to the car place and say the
That's
car's
perfectly fine.
broken, or the lights came on, and if the lights keep coming on, I get rid of the car.
So we
but-
taught the boys how to do stuff, and so they all
Yeah.
can change their own brakes, which they save hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
And it's not that hard to do either.
Right, and then my youngest son has one of his father-in-law's older cars. It's in his garage, so he's putting that back together again, because they don't make them anymore. It's kind of like my father's car.
if
They don't
like-
make them, but my father's car
Yeah,
doesn't
this is
need
my-
any work.
This program is my hobby. I like doing it. It's my hobby. And, okay, that's cool. It's not my hobby to fix a car.
Well, and
I
you're,
don't
Sam,
know
you
that they have it
enjoy
as
it.
a
and you're
hobby.
in the, and you're
It's a
in the
necessity.
majority. You're in the majority, because most people
Oh, that's cool.
look at the car as an appliance, as a tool. I mean, they're not that interested. Back in the 1970s, you were doing great if your car was still running after 100,000 miles, and that is,
Very true.
I would say, well,
It depends on how you
I'd
take
say
care
the
of it.
line was in the 70s. Yes, that's true, but prior to 1970, several factors contributed to the shortness of life of a vehicle. First of all, the quality of the motor oil was far, far inferior to what you have today. Secondly, you had carbureted cars, which means that gasoline sometimes would wash past the carburetor down into the cylinders and dilute the oil, and you had leaded gasoline, okay?
Well, yeah, because that helped with the valves.
And you had, the cars were geared higher, which means the engine turns faster, which means you accumulate more piston travel. So in a 1955 car, by the time your engine hit 60, 70,000, it was shot, mostly, okay? Today, if you don't get 100,000 miles out of your car, you got a lemon, okay? you got a lemon if you don't get at least 100,000.
Well, the other
So,
thing that happens here is if you have a lease car, usually it's up in 3 years. So people just keep turning over their vehicles.
Not,
Yep.
the problem with the lease is,
I wouldn't know. I've never done one.
I did
first
it for
time
the company.
they said, this is fantastic, I love my leased car. 3 years goes by and they go like, what do I get for a trade-in? Nothing.
No, because you leased it. You don't own it.
You borrowed the car, you
Yeah.
rented the car.
the-
And they go like, there's no trade-in?
Well, they give you book value, basically.
No, they won't.
The
You don't own the car, you leased it.
If you have a lease car, that's how it is. You can do lease to own.
You don't get a trade-in, but I'm talking about the cost of owning or leasing the car. That's how they calculate it, okay? So the problem with the lease is, and the way it does make sense for some people to lease. If you are a person who's always going to have a car payment, okay, and there are a lot of people out there, they're always going to have a car payment. So if that's you, and you don't drive that much, leasing might make sense. And the car dealers love leasing because they make tons more money on leasing than they do on a sale. Tons more money.
Well, it's over
And
time.
I'll speak as an accountant, and I know a little bit about the car leasing. It's all about residual value for a car dealer on leasing. So the higher cars that retain their value, don't depreciate as quickly, are the ones they like to lease because they get the residual value. And so you lease a car for 3 years, and you're paying on a lease. The dealer gets the car back, and if that car has retained 60% of its value, now they turn around and they sell it.
Yeah.
So they get the benefit of the sale, and the profits on a used car sale are generally higher than they are on new cars. They'll get the profits from the used car, plus they've had the 3 years of the lease. I mean, the car dealers love leasing. They would much rather lease you a car than sell you a car.
That's funny.
Yes. Back in the day, we would tinker with our cars to give us an excuse to hang out with the boys and drink beer. That is absolutely true. I rebuilt my first engine in my garage, or my father's garage, when I was 16 years old. It was an old Ford flathead V8.
So you've always been involved.
Oh,
It never really interested me too much.
I was a college prep student in high school, and I had to fight to take an auto mechanics course. This was back before we had Voc Techs and all the vocational stuff was within your own high school, and I wanted desperately to take auto mechanics, and I was told I couldn't because I was college prep.
Oh, I remember those days.
And my father knew the principal of the high school quite well, and he called him up and he said, "Jack, my kid wants to take something useful. Let him do it." And the principal said, he said, "We really don't have a rule that says he can't do it. It's just more or less the custom, that they always did." So they let me into the auto mechanic. I took 2 years of auto mechanics in high school, and I loved it.
See, my father didn't
Yeah.
do a whole lot with vehicles. My uncle would always do stuff, but I wasn't there all the time for him when he did stuff. But if my father had done that, I probably would have been far more interested. I mean, I didn't have
Well,
brothers.
you are mechanically, you have mechanical aptitude, which not everybody has, so,
I like to know how things work, and I
Right.
like to know how things fix it, because one of the other, well, I'm not going to go off on another tangent. Let's keep on this one. But my father was into trying to, redo the basement, and he would find used wood. There used to be like a junkyard way up behind us, and he'd go up there and he'd find whatever people dumped up there in terms of 2x4s or whatever it is, bring it home, take the nails out, straighten the nails, and reuse
Oh, no,
them.
that's going a little too far.
I used to do that.
When I
Straightening the nails.
when I cleaned out the house, there was a can of straightened nails, because I could tell.
That's pretty-
And
that's
he would
pretty
reuse
economical.
stuff. Well, I don't mind even doing stuff like that, because it kind of feeds into my recycling thing I do.
God
Sinkhole.
bless anyone who drives a fancy car on these streets. Too many sinkholes, so.
Well, too
yeah,
many potholes.
That's
That's Massachusetts.
In the wintertime especially, you really have to watch out.
And if you have a fancy car, you don't usually drive it in the wintertime because of the salt on the roads will erode or rot out your car unless you keep it very clean. So that's something different. So we've talked about cars enough. We can go on to something else.
Go ahead, you're the host.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's a whole lot of different things that we can talk about. Just briefly, usually I, share things that's going on.
What do we got to eat today?
You should put it up on the camera. What I made a couple of
Well,
things,
don't
but I
put it
only
by the
brought
coffee
one.
pot.
Yeah, it smells really good, but it's an almond cake with.
Almond cake.
Well, that's because I have cranberries, and that. There you go. You're doing really well.
Can you zoom in on
I'll
it?
get rid of the, I gotta get rid of the graphics.
Anyway, so
Oh, here we go, look at this.
yep. So it's almond flavoring.
Is it
and
frosting on it?
Yes, and that's
Okay.
almond also.
All right.
And, it's like a glaze. I made it thicker.
Oh, it looks like you have cranberries in there.
That's correct. Cranberries, some orange, and ground up almonds, salted almonds.
Oh,
So we'll see how it tastes.
4 pieces.
That's because there's only going to be 4 people here.
Okay, there you go.
Other than that, I would have brought more stuff.
Be gone.
The other cake that I made, which I'll bring one to you when we do dinner, I made one that had apples and cinnamon in it. But I didn't make
that's
the
what I
Amish
like.
fritter bread because that's really good if anybody's interested in doing that. And one of the things that I also had made, like last week, was a variation on a Swedish apple pie. Swedish apple pie is really simple because you just cut up all of the apples, 3 to 5 Granny Smiths, because you want them to have texture, and you have like a quarter of a cup to half a cup of sugar with cinnamon, and you roll those apple slices in it and put it in a greased pie plate, usually a 9-inch or a 9.5-inch pie plate. I don't use an 8. And then you have 1 stick of butter melted, 1 cup of sugar, cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 cup of flour, and an egg. And you mix that and you just put it over the top, put it at 350, and it takes between 30 minutes and 45 minutes to cook it. It's really
Very
good. You like that.
I do like it.
And but what I had done
Anything with
over,
apples is good.
yeah. Some people just like the cinnamon. They're not into the other anything else. Because I noticed with John, when I was co-host with George Anthes, people would bring donuts all the time until George couldn't have them, of course.
Yes, I remember that.
Right, and,
We still do donuts.
well, we don't do,
You know who used to bring in the donuts was George Rulis. He would always bring in donuts.
yeah, but other people did too.
Yeah.
You know, we had Ray Booton, and he would go get different ones, and he would do the apple fritters, which I really liked. Of course, none of this stuff is good for you, so we'll stop talking about food unless somebody really wants to know some recipe or something that's interesting to eat.
I just gained 2 pounds talking about it. Never mind eating it.
Anyway, so we're going to get together for dinner this weekend, and I'm going to
are?
make, yes, news
Oh.
to you? Anyway, one of the
No,
days.
I'm going to quote my 7-year-old grandson. Papa, no one tells us anything, okay? That's what my 7-year-old grandson says.
So
No one
I'm
tells us anything.
going to make one of your favorites. I'm
Yeah.
making eggplant parm,
Oh, ooh.
and then I'm going to make my own sauce, a meat sauce, and then I've got vegetables that will go in it. So it's not like an eggplant casserole, but because there's no pasta.
Oh, listen, I know you. You can't make a straight eggplant. No.
I never did. I used to.
You've got to put a whole bunch of other stuff in there, which is fine, because it's always good, but, you know.
Well, if I make the sauce, there'll be onions. I have yellow peppers, sweet peppers, not hot peppers, and I have like 100% ground beef because I grind it roasts, and there's like no fat. There's nothing added to that, and I have broccoli and spinach.
Right.
That I'll have too, and
I
then of course
remember
then
that
you've got
from
the
the last time.
tomatoes and the different seasonings.
Now, my
with regard
wife
to that.
eats cooked tomatoes.
Yes, this is cooked.
She can't eat
Excuse me.
raw tomatoes, so I don't quite understand that, but that's the way it is, so.
Well, that's like with my
Yeah.
my
Does
kids.
she like pine cone?
probably.
Tomatoes, yeah.
Oh, pine cone tomatoes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you clarified that. I
It's a
thought you were
brand.
asking me if she ate pine cones. I don't know, I'm not,
Pine cone tomato, oh my God, we have that.
what's the difference
A
between
dish that's called goulash, and, oh, it's just absolutely delicious.
what's the difference between a regular tomato and a pine cone tomato?
It's canned,
Okay,
it's juicy,
so it's cooked?
Yes.
and
This-
I
yeah.
think it's extra yummy.
Yeah.
All right, I think we might have had those, that
It's a
sounds-
brand, but I just
that
buy
sounds,
Market Basket,
That sounds familiar. Right.
because,
Sam, I got 2 texts here.
Mr. MCD, that's you, has the best job ever. Baked goodies every morning.
Yeah, I love it here. It's
Now,
good. It's a good hobby.
But wait a minute, now, do your other people on your other days bring in baked goodies, or is it
Yeah.
just Evelyn? Oh, okay, so they,
Well, actually, we had spectacular, well, oh my God, looks delicious, forget about it. On
okay.
Tuesday,
Who does the baking?
well, sometimes guests bring stuff.
Okay,
So, Karen Casella, the new Register of Deeds.
oh, she's a baker, good for her.
She just comes in with treats. She had these lemon and blueberry cookies, and you go like, I don't know about that. Until you take a little bite and you go like, wow.
Yeah, lemon stuff can be good.
well, I
Oh
made
my
you
God,
lemon
best
blue.
cookie I've had in a long time. Oh, these
I'm
are
not into cookies, I'm
soft,
into tea breads because it's breakfast.
Lemon stuff can be good.
delicious.
But I made you guys lemon blueberry coffee cake.
Well, I
And
will
that's really
I
good.
will anxiously eat it next time because Karen Casella, the stuff that she made last Tuesday was out of this world.
Hey, that must have been, that was probably worth a couple of hundred votes, right? The fact that she could bake, so,
I don't think that she broadcast that during her candidacy.
well, she should have.
Some people
during
just
her,
like to bake. I just
election
like to
season.
bake.
Whatever you want to call it, election
She didn't
season.
need the help. She did pretty well at the election, so.
I mean, there's all kinds of different things out there, and there's easy recipes that's out there also, if people are interested. But I'm not going to make it for this weekend because the other couple they're bringing dessert. But I bought the ricotta because I was going to make a ricotta pie, and I haven't done that in decades
What's
and
a
decades.
ricotta? Ricotta with an R?
Yeah, RICOTTA.
Oh, it's a cheese pie.
Yes.
Ricotta,
It's like cheesecake, but it's made with ricotta.
which is a little bit healthier, I think, than
Yes, it's not as much fat.
cream cheese,
Oh, I don't
right?
care about healthiness.
Yeah, well, if I'm going to eat
I'm
a
here for
cheesecake,
the
I'm not
grub.
caring
Well,
about it
I
either.
gotta tell you, I'll be 78 in March, and I'm getting to where John is. You know, I've been watching my diet all my life, and
Yep.
and at some point, you know.
You get
I'm
tired.
getting close to 80. I'm gonna say, you know what? I'm just gonna eat the thing, whatever
If
it
you
is.
want good-looking daisies on your grave, you have to eat good food.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. We'll remember that.
Yeah, but if you eat
Evelyn's going
the,
to have weeds. That's what she's going to have.
yeah, but you can eat the weeds.
Maybe on my, maybe
Can't
on
eat
my,
the daisies, but you can
maybe
eat
on
the
my
weeds.
tombstone, I'll have inscribed.
Nah, I don't care. The cholesterol. I couldn't care less. My favorite statement, I'll tell anybody this one here. The doctor will say, Mr. McDonough, you should lose like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
I just
good
got a
luck.
pallbearer.
You know what you do, John? You know what I did?
Good luck with that. Trying
You know
to do
what I
that.
did?
I'm trying. It's not working.
I shopped around for a doctor who is about 30 pounds overweight herself. Okay, that's what I did.
Herself?
I found an overweight doctor, yes. So I don't hear about my weight.
I don't hear about mine either.
My mother-in-law, many, many, many years ago,
You're not fat, Sam.
I have to watch my weight. But
I watch everything I eat as it goes into
the
my mouth.
my mother-in-law, who was a heavy smoker, she shopped around for 2 years to find a doctor who smoked.
I love smoking.
Okay, and she and Dr. Callender in Groton, it was good, but smoked. There were very few doctors at that point, and almost I would say none today smoke. But she said, I'm going to find me a doctor who smokes because I'm sick and tired of being lectured to by my doctor about smoking. And I thought, you know what? I'll find one who's a little overweight.
I think
Right?
cigarettes before the Korean War were a lot more healthy than they are now. Now they have all these chemicals in them.
It's the chemicals when they
That-
burn that causes the cancer in your lungs.
And the paper too, that's.
Anything.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you,
The
so
tobacco
it
itself, when it's rolled, and the way they used to roll cigarettes,
No, it's-
way back, even in the 1800s, it's not healthy,
It's
but
never
it's
good
better
for
than
you.
what it is today.
Right. I mean,
And wh- and
he's right.
because you also
He's
have a
right.
lot of flavorings.
Did you ever smoke, Evelyn?
No,
I did, 26 years.
I
Nope.
loved it. As soon as I get to heaven, I'm going to ask St. Peter, where can I get a pack of Cools up here, buddy?
oh, you're awful.
Well, I'm too cheap to smoke now. It's too expensive.
Well, that's one of the reasons, there were several reasons why I didn't smoke or take it up.
I don't even know if cigarettes are. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Did your parents smoke?
No.
Well, okay, then you got a head start there.
Number one was,
Yeah.
it was very difficult to breathe when other people were smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I felt as though that if I smoked, it was like taking dollar bills and lighting them on fire.
Well, it is
And
today,
that
for
really
sure,
didn't
right.
go with me. But the real reason was my father said to me, if I find out that you're smoking, you're going to sit in front of me and eat a whole pack of cigarettes. And I said, I
That-
don't think I need to do that.
that
I'm
would-
happy,
yeah, that
perfectly
would- that
happy. It was a
would,
great deterrent.
That would put you off the works. I had no choice. My
Did you tell
parents-
your mother you were smoking?
She didn't smoke.
No, did you tell your mother you were smoking?
Well, yeah, because both my parents smoked, okay, so what were they gonna say? And their rule, and my sister was a heavy smoker, and their rule was no smoking until you're 16, okay, that's the rule we had in our house. But as a matter of fact, both my sister and I started when we were around 14. Now, my brother, I don't know how he ever did it, but with four smokers puffing away like chimneys in the house.
He didn't have to smoke.
My brother never
He didn't have to, he just inhaled.
never smoked, and even when he was in the Air Force, he never smoked, and I just
No, my
I had no. I mean,
parents
we
didn't
smoked,
smoke.
but I will say I didn't really. When I was a teenager in high school, I smoked maybe a pack and a half a week. Okay. And it wasn't until I got to college that I really started to smoke. And then when I was in the Army, I smoked 2-3 packs a day when in the service because we bought cigarettes for $2 a carton from the PX. That's what they were, $2 a carton. And they restricted you to 2 cartons a week. So if you're an enlisted man, you could only buy 2 cartons a week because they were afraid you would buy them and then sell them outside.
Yep.
On the black market, which is, of course, is what some people did, but,
And I think
Yeah.
of my 3 kids, I think the only one that smoked was the oldest one.
I didn't know any of your kids smoked.
Well, now
A
kids are
while,
lot
they don't
more
do it
aware.
now.
Glenn,
It's-
Glenn smoked?
Oh, yeah, when he was in
Oh,
college.
Did not know that, yeah.
A lot better education we have today than we did
Yeah,
yesteryear.
it's no good. It's no good.
That's why soda is not as popular. The young kids, they don't drink Coke and Pepsi.
My oldest daughter, I know you're not going to believe this, but it's the God's honest truth. My oldest daughter, Jennifer, she's 42. She has never tasted soda. She's never had a Coke. She's never had a ginger ale. She's never even tasted it. Has no interest. I know that's an incredible story, but it is the God's honest truth.
I believe you.
Yeah, she,
Well, growing up, my mother
Yep.
we didn't have money to buy soda, but my uncle did. So we would have.
so he was your favorite uncle, right?
Well, because my father was in the Marine Corps when I was born and wasn't home for like the first year and a half, he wasn't around. We lived with my grandmother and my uncle. And my uncle didn't get married until after my grandmother died. So it was like, I always thought he was my father. So it was like having a second father.
Oh, that's
And
good.
then he treated my sister and myself as if we were his kids.
Well, that's good.
And did up until the day he died. And
You were very lucky to have that.
but it was like having 2 fathers. This is it's very difficult, and that kind of can segue into the fact that my mother at 103 is still living, and but there's a few
amazing.
things. And if anybody is out there and they have had good experiences with nursing homes up in this area, then please let John know. But John should know more about nursing homes and what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, because we go there at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, because people die, and as a funeral director, he goes.
And that's when, if you're going to pick out a nursing home, and you really like the place, pop by some afternoon at 5 o'clock unannounced and just walk through.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
and smell and see how
Yeah, exactly.
good things are going. And 5 o'clock in the afternoon, supper time. It's very busy time in a nursing home, and that's the best time to walk through.
I think that's very good advice.
Well, there's only a couple that's up in this area that are potential, because my mother's from the South Shore. But the conversation that I'm having with my sister seems to sound like she's not coming up here. You know, the path of least resistance.
Your
Your
sister's not
sister's
coming
in
up
Florida.
here?
No, my mother.
Oh, your mother's not going to?
I want her up in my area, so
She
because
doesn't
instead of
wanna
having a
come
2-hour
in.
trip
Right.
one way,
Right.
possibly the same going home, because it's all on the Southeast Expressway and/or Route
Does
128.
she like it where she is?
My mother?
Yeah.
My mother wouldn't like it anywhere.
Well, okay.
So where she's at, it isn't that she likes it and she can stay. She needs more care than what they're giving her.
Okay, all right. So she really needs to be in,
And the amount of money that we're spending on what kind of care she's getting, she needs to be in a nursing home.
so she needs to have really total care, basically. is what you're
Well,
saying.
I mean, she can walk around and she can talk and she can feed herself.
pretty
and she
good
can
at
There's a whole
103.
lot of other things that she can do. But there are some things that she'd kill me if she knew I was on TV talking about her. She's beginning to forget certain things, and some of those things you need to do for yourself.
That's
Right.
why I call you Kathy. Everybody forgets stuff.
Well, that's true, but not quite this.
Yeah, but
Not to this extent
you
of what
forget
it
to-
is.
You forget to eat.
Well, she's
yeah.
not forgetting to eat. She just doesn't
Okay,
want to eat, and she
but,
never
I mean,
did.
As an example, she's forgetting things that you need to naturally do.
That is correct.
To sustain yourself, right?
Yeah. Or,
So-
yeah.
Well, it
and
reminds
if
me of the
physical.
story of the old buckaroo that's crying on a park bench in South Common over here, and walk over to the guy and I said, "Can I help you out, buddy?" He says, I said, "What's bothering you?" He says, I'm married to a very young woman. We have sex several times a day. She's a fantastic cook. I said, "Well, why are you crying?" He said, "I forgot where I live." So, Sam, you got these two texts?
The good old days when your parents could actually do it and not just threaten you with it. For example, making you eat a pack of smokes. Yes, back in the day, most adults wouldn't go outside to smoke, and everyone smoked back then. Yes, they did.
That's it. Thanks.
Yes, they did. I can remember my parents, this is back in the 1950s when I was growing up, my parents would have people in on a Friday night, for example, and by 7:30, 8 o'clock, the house was blue, absolutely blue with cigarette smoke. And like Evelyn said, you almost didn't have to smoke because you
Back when I was a kid,
you got it
we had
secondhand.
to pack the smoker room with cigarettes. There were bowls. There were these bowls. There were coconut bowls with yellow interiors, and we had Marlboros, Camels, and Cools.
Oh, those, all three very strong brands.
And if they bought a mahogany casket, my grandfather had a box of cigars and say, "Put these out."
There you go. Well, as a kid,
That's in the Wayback Machine.
one of my chores as a kid was cleaning out the ashtrays. So my job in the morning was, before I went to school, I had to go around the house and collect all the ashtrays and bring them into the kitchen and wash them out. Now, anybody who's done that understands that once water hits the cigarette ashes, the smell is absolutely foul.
Yep, I know
Oh, it is absolutely, but that was my job, one of my chores that I had to do. Every day I had to get the
Well, at the
cigarette
funeral home,
ashes.
Sam, I had the same job. I had this sand sifter that would sift all the butts out, and the butts had to go into a bucket with water.
Terrible smell.
Yeah, you got to make sure that they're out before you put them in the trash.
Right.
Well, we didn't have any of that. Plus, my mother was the last of 10, and I would say at least 3.
Comment says there was an ashtray in every room.
Oh,
Yeah, at
several,
every chair.
several ashtrays in every room.
At least 3 of her
Yeah.
6 brothers
Yes,
smoked.
absolutely right.
And
Although my
those
parent-
guys died in their 30s
My
because of
parents were
smoking.
My parents were very,
drinking.
very strict about not smoking in your bedroom. I mean, never mind the bed. We were not allowed to smoke in our bedrooms at all. Okay, and
That was smart.
yeah. Oh no, they were
All of
absolutely
this
adamant about that.
about cigarettes is all foreign to me because we didn't grow up with it. I didn't smoke.
Oh, we're so sorry for you.
Well, you may live longer than the rest of us.
I don't think so. Everybody, when they talk about, my father died at 100, my mother is still
They-
living at 103.
They didn't smoke.
Well, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink. My father made all the food from scratch. They hardly ever went out to dinner. They didn't have.
She's 103 and she missed all that fun?
Well, she was
We could
always.
start now.
Yeah.
We would. My sister and I were kind of going over some things, and I was doing some stuff with talking to my sister-in-law about things. And when people ask me different questions, like, "What is your mother's secret to living longer?" The secret is that you have a spouse that takes care of you, and you don't have to stress over paying your bills and a number of things. Even though my mother had stresses.
Like the Queen of England. She
I don't know.
had no
I mean,
worries.
I look
Queen
at
of
it,
Quincy.
and I mean, I know a whole lot more because I was around my parents a whole lot more than my sister was, but still, she has a tremendous faith. I think part of that is something that you can have as a reason for living longer, even though there are people that have a faith and they die at 25. I don't know, but there's a whole lot of pieces to that. That's
Yep.
another story for another day.
And a lot of it's
So
genetics.
before Jay gets here, one of the other things to talk about is some of the stuff going on politically. We're going to get a new president.
You want to
And-
talk a little bit about the confirmations?
Yeah, so there are confirmation hearings. He has picked a cabinet. The members of the cabinet, there's not a lot of old people there. I think he's probably the oldest one there. And
I
there's a
like
lot of
that.
people from Florida, and people that have probably a very different perspective than prior cabinets. Plus, I don't think he has picked a cabinet that represents everything and everybody as far as how society
Well, he hasn't.
will view.
He hasn't focused on race or gender or, I mean,
Well, there's a lot of women.
there are a lot of women, and which should put to rest the notion that he doesn't like capable women around. I
Or
mean,
strong women.
That's absolutely absurd, and we can all now see that. But I watched all of Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing, saw the whole thing, and, which is good, because now I don't need to listen to the slanted news telling me what was said, because I actually watched it.
Hey,
I-
Sam,
I
can you
know
wiggle
it was-
that rod?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
better, thanks.
And then I watched about 90% of Pam Bondi's hearing, and I watched maybe 40% of Rubio's hearing. Now, that's a different situation, because
Try cocking it to one side.
he's not,
Is it loose?
No, he's bouncing it. We're
yeah,
good.
okay.
You're good.
Yeah,
Continue.
so Rubio is not before the Judiciary Committee. So the thing with the Judiciary is that, of course, they're all lawyers on the Judiciary Committee, so that's how that goes. But the thing that struck me, I mean, I thought Hegseth did very well. There were a couple of things that I think I might have answered a little differently, but I thought he did very well. Obviously, the questioning was openly hostile from the Democratic side.
They said they were going to. They're going to get
right,
back at the Republicans.
exactly, but-
this is like small children saying, "You did this to me, and I'm going to do that to
right.
you."
And that precedent,
Crazy.
that precedent started back in the 80s, the late 80s, with the confirmation hearing of Robert Bork to the Supreme Court. That's when that really got started. Before then, it was,
More collegial.
well, it was more collegial because
And
the
respectful?
thought process, which I still agree is what ought to be prevailing here. The thought process is their job is to make sure you got a qualified candidate, not that they agree with you ideologically. And historically, it's always been that way. So you will get a Democratic president who brings forth somebody who has a more progressive point of view. The Republicans on the Judiciary Committee don't agree with that ideology, but they look and they say, well, this guy, he's an accomplished attorney. He's got a good record. We've got his judicial record before us. I mean, he looks like he's a reasonable judge. We don't agree with him politically, but you know what? He's qualified. We're going to vote for him. Okay? And the purpose is to make sure you got a qualified candidate. So just as an example, if I were on the Judiciary Committee and I were an avid Trump supporter, if they had put Matt Getz before me, I'd have voted against him. He flat outright was not qualified. Absolutely not qualified. No way, shape, or form, okay? And that's why he was withdrawn, because the Republicans weren't going to vote for him, because he wasn't qualified, okay? Now, let's fast forward to Pam Bondi. I watched that whole thing. She is brilliant, okay? I don't care, folks, you're listening to me. I know you people, some of you hate Trump, you don't like what I'm saying, but watch, if you can, watch some of that hearing. She's brilliant. She handled the questions brilliantly. She is going to get some Democratic votes. She may even get a couple of votes on the Judiciary Committee from Democrats, but when she's before the Senate, she will get Democrat votes, okay? I don't think Hegseth is going to get a single Democrat vote, but she will get some. As far as Rubio is concerned, I think he'll sail through, and he'll get, I think, quite a few Democrat votes, because he's one of them. He's a senator. They know him, and he did very, very well answering questions. I mean, I don't know too much about Mark Rubio, but watching him, he is obviously a very, very bright guy, and I was impressed greatly with his command of the facts and what's going on. He's already got a good jump on being Secretary of State. I mean, he has taken the trouble to inform himself, and of course, being a senator for so many years, he's been privy to all of the classified briefings and everything from a foreign policy standpoint. So he's, anybody coming from the United States Senate into that position, whether a Republican or Democrat, doesn't make any difference. Anybody coming into that position is already a step ahead, because they've been a United States senator and they are privy to all the information that a lot of people aren't. So I think he'll be easily confirmed.
What I liked of what I saw, and was you had one of the Republican senators, when you had one of the Democrat senators questioning Pete Hegseth as far as his alcohol consumption was, basically say, you have appeared on the floor for votes drunk.
Yeah, what he said.
Who are you to question this guy drinking at parties?
I think it was Senator Moore. He said,
They have a slush fund so that if they have any issues, the senators, if they have any issues with filling up the pages or whatever it is that they want to do, then they can pay them off, and it's our tax money that's doing that.
That's right.
And to me,
isn't that nice?
To me, what should currently happen as a result of what's going on is there should be some kind of disclosure, or somebody basically being the whistleblower saying, the senator from this state, and the senator from this state, and the senator from this state last night showed up drunk. You can see it on the camera because everything is
We're going to go
televised.
to break shortly, so we're going to blow through these texts quickly.
Rules for thee, but not for me. I
love that.
I can sum up Hegseth's hearing in one line. I'm not a general senator. Oh, my God, that was unbelievable when he did that. Thanks, Lizzie. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Thanks,
that
Lizzie,
one.
you didn't do any favors.
Oh, she...
Oh, she's crazy.
Well, she is crazy.
Please, Evelyn, Trump is the master of redistribution.
Oh, my God.
Writing.
Let's stop
Most of
trying to
cabinet
poke
choices
me, dear.
Are unqualified. Well, I don't know what that word is, sarcophagus.
Psychopath.
Sycophants.
Yeah, big deal.
All I say is, when you see, this person's going to be in charge of the trash cans, look at who President Biden has in charge of the trash cans. It's just amazing.
Well, it's like the Secretary of Transportation. Look at the mess we're in.
I would ask that person to go back and watch part of the Pam Bondi confirmation, and if
Well,
you
don't want to break when this one's done.
if you really and if you have any objectivity in you at all, there is no way anybody can watch her and say she's unqualified. She is superbly qualified for that position.
Yeah.
You still
And
see
she
sig-
will get Democrat
So please
votes.
stay with us, guys.
Yes.
We got the Chelmsford Superintendent of Schools with us, and we'll
he
be
here?
back.
I'm going to read this.
Go ahead.
Like it or not. You still
I read
see
it.
cigarette butts all over the place for the same reason, throwing those things all over the ground is okay, disgusting.
Yeah.
We're going to break land, we'll be back, thanks.
Don't throw anything.
I
521.
think we're gonna put the mic on that.
Oh, okay,
You know enough TV, YouTube.
all right.
Go ahead.
Welcome back, City Life. I'm Evelyn Thoren. I'm your host for the next 54 minutes, 55 minutes or so. Sam Chase is my co-host this morning. John McDonough is behind the camera, sometimes on the screen.
Can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
You're the host. Why do I get the top billing? My name is first. Why is that?
It's under you,
What?
on the screen.
Okay.
It's
Under you.
You know what? That makes perfect sense. I never would have thought of that.
Anyway, Bob Hoey's with us this morning. He has some other commitments. We miss you. I cooked for you. Everything's fine. Anyway, we're just waiting on the superintendent to show up. If he doesn't, well, we always have plenty of things to talk about, that's for sure.
No, don't see him yet. So-
And so Chelmsford.
Not yet, Ev. That's the parking lot, so not
Yep,
yet.
there's my 260,000 mile Honda Odyssey sitting there.
We can see its tongue's hanging out, it's puffing over there.
Everything's fine. So, this is Chelmsford's political season. We have our elections the first Tuesday in April, unless, of course, you get 18 inches of snow.
Be April 1st this year.
Oh, another April 1st? Well, let's see if we repeat what we did quite a
Hope
number of
not.
years ago. I hope not either. And so, what John could do at some point, if he's not doing something else over there, is to pull up Town of Chelmsford website, and we find out what is available for people in Chelmsford to
run
run
for?
for.
What offices are
Well,
available?
every office needs competition. One of our viewers likes our ringtone.
Yeah, can I get that intermission music as a ringtone?
Ralph Funaro, the organist, he's one of those great singers, organists. That's his song. And so
don't
I
think
talked
I've
to him probably like 10 years ago. I said, hey, Ralph, you got a song I can use that's not copyright? Because what happens is you play a copyright song, Facebook goes, hey, we're going to shut your video
Yeah.
off. We're going to
Yep.
shut the audio
Yep.
off.
Yep.
So he said, sure, use it. So he gets credit in the credits and stuff.
Beautiful.
That's from Ralph Funaro, very talented guy.
Nothing better than getting permission from the composer, right?
Yeah, I want to use this as an example.
There you go.
Last city council meeting, I watched a little snippet of it, and the police chief's up there. And they're all wicked nice people. They way overpay for stuff. So for all these security cameras in downtown Lowell, they're going to pay $165,000. And then what the hell's the matter? Why do they pay so much money for these cameras? Oh, that's installation and maintenance and that's over the senior center. I'm on the Friends of the Lowell Senior Center board. We just bought a camera for the elevator for $90. So why does the city overpay for stuff? These cameras, which they're secret, nobody can watch them. Nobody can watch these cameras. $167,000. And the city council just, go ahead, go get them.
Well, I think
Way overpaying for
Well,
these
they ought to
cameras.
be able to give you an explanation as to
So I
why it
have this
costs.
camera, just for an example, and I'm gonna get rid of this text message, and I'm gonna go to the rooftop camera. And we go to the rooftop.
Well, you got a lot of cameras there.
Yeah, there's tons of them. We didn't spend $165,000. This one here is awesome. It's the best camera that we have.
nice and clear.
That's a very clear image.
And we put it up last
There you
summer.
go.
It cost us $2,000, and because I like it. But you can pan, tilt, zoom. There's no maintenance on this camera. And
How long have you had it?
since last summer. And the one that we took down went someplace else. We're still using it. So good stuff.
Well,
And I don't understand why municipalities pay so much money for cameras. You're getting ripped off. That's all I want to.
well, I don't want to speak for the city of Lowell, but what I will tell you is that if they bought, any purchases made by the public authority, if they're over a certain amount, in the aggregate, I forget what the number is, I think it might be $30,000.
Used to be 30.
If it's over that, they do have to go out to public bid, so they have to
But
get,
Sam, I mean, look
they
at
have to
how-
get bids.
I'm going to demonstrate this camera here. My son Joe,
Yeah.
he's the guy who put the stuff in. You press all these different buttons now. Here we are. You can see City Hall is right over here. And there's a button here you push, and you hit City Hall, and the camera will just go there.
Bring you right in. Yeah, nice.
And
That's cool.
how hard is that? You press another button like, where else? We got to go to, okay, we'll go up to
Well-
Belvedere. We'll go look at Mahoney's. That's Nesmith Street.
There you go.
That's live traffic from, that's
But-
Mahoney Funeral Homes over here.
You ought to be able to get an explanation. I mean, your question was, the thing cost X amount, why? And they ought to be able to explain it to you.
I'm just telling city councilors then, because many of
Yeah.
them like to listen to local broadcasts. And I just think that you're way overpaying for these cameras. What else are you way overpaying?
I will tell you this, and unless you've got 20 minutes, don't ask Paul Cohen why we pay what we pay, because you will get the most detailed explanation you would ever want to have, okay? So, I mean, there's no reason why you cannot ask your public people why.
So Jay's on his
know.
way in, he should be here shortly,
Okay.
because I texted him. But if you can pull up the Town of Chelmsford website, and you go to the town clerk's office, you go to elections, we can see
Should be
exactly
right on the
what,
front page.
it should be, you
Yeah.
should be able to do that. So we have, the board is, well, it's called a
Select
select
board.
board, I'd like to change that back. Anyway, so there's 2 positions available.
For the full 3-year term.
Yes, and so far, we've got 2 people that have pulled. We have one incumbent, that's Pat Wojcik, and we have Aaron Cunningham, he tried last year.
All right,
And then,
the present incumbent who is up, which is Virginia Timmons, she has not
yet,
yet polled, but she has until when? What's the
it's
date?
going to say what it
Okay,
is, so
she's,
people know,
she's
sometime in
got,
February.
She's
Usually
got a
it's-
couple of weeks
Yeah,
to
usually
make up
it's
her
right,
mind. Right.
usually the deadline is right before February
Mm-hmm.
vacation. And then you have school committee, and 2 people have
well-
pulled, that's John Moses and Marie Santos pulled.
Don't leave the select board yet. You have a
I know that.
I'll go to
third seat.
Chelmsford's website after this
Yeah.
text.
If the
Okay.
government is paying overcharge, that seems to be the mentality of the public.
Sector.
I can't see it. I only read.
I added that word.
Oh, okay. There's a whole lot of interesting discussion that we can have with regard to that, but I want to do the
When is
election
your
thing.
election in Chelmsford?
April 1st.
The first Tuesday in April,
Yeah.
All right, I'll get
by
the
charter.
town of Chelmsford up and we can look at that. But I'm encouraging everybody to run for public office
Why not?
in lovely Lowell, Massachusetts.
Well, we also
every
have-
city councilor needs to be challenged.
Especially if you're complaining. Run.
And we have representative town meeting, and it's a great way to get involved because we only meet twice a year. Now, we do have a special town meeting that is January 27th.
You just blew that.
I know. And sometimes we have special town meetings, but it's not like once a year.
There he is.
Well, so much for looking at things. But anyway, Jay
Be right there.
Jay will be here shortly. So we do have the election. We want to encourage people to run. And so George Dixon resigned as of April 1st on the select board.
So he has
And
2 years left on the term.
yes, and Jeff Hardy has pulled for that position, and we haven't seen any others.
Jeff is currently chairman of the Cemetery Commission.
Yeah, I didn't know there was only 3 commissioners.
Yes.
So anyway, that would leave his slot open, because I don't think you can run for 2 things at the same
You
time,
cannot,
can you?
in Chelmsford, under our charter, you may not hold more than 1 elected position. You can hold as many appointed positions as you want, but only 1 elected. So he has to step aside, and my understanding is that
Kirk Marshall pulled.
Kirk Marshall pulled for the Cemetery Commission, so that will...
See, and I was going to do that, and Kirk called me, and I didn't know he was going to pull, because I had told Jeff I would do that, and so he pulled, and it's like, okay, fine, I don't need to do that.
Jeff is currently chairman, so you'll have 2 people on the commission that are presently there, plus a new person, and they're going to have to decide on a new chairperson.
Oh, maybe it'll be Candy. Probably Nancy.
We'll see.
We were going to make it so it was all women.
It will, no, it won't be all women.
It won't, but I mean, I told you, I thought I'd like to
But
do that.
You want it, Jay?
The women have the majority, though.
Just mow it.
Hello. Yep, we're going to let
Slide
you
in here.
get, oh, you're going to go in the middle.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, while we're getting Jay to sit down, I'm just going to show, the city's finally going to tear down the senior center. It's on today's Lowell Sun front page. They're finally going to turn down the Smith Baker Center, which is across the street from downtown Lowell. It's older than dirt building and beautiful in its day. It was a church, and they're going to tear it down. So front page of today's Lowell Sun. Back to you guys, thanks.
Okay.
Hi. So we have with us Superintendent of Schools, Jay Lang. Good morning.
I'm gonna move Jay's mic to him, should be 4 inches from his mouth, and just
apologize.
tip the mic down
You
so it
wanted to
looks
ask
like he
him
has
about his,
teeth.
You wanted to ask him about his doctorate. We had that discussion this morning.
Well, anyway,
did you?
yeah, so it was really funny, he said Dr. J. Lang, and then what Sam did was he said, he's not a medical doctor, he's not a pill pusher.
Right.
So he has a degree, and it's probably in education, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but what did you do your thesis on?
It was on the influence of collective bargaining on school reform and student achievement initiatives.
That explains a lot.
I enjoyed it.
I always looked at Jay during the contract negotiation, I'm saying, the guy really knows what he's doing. Well, now I have the background, see?
Yeah, I always very much enjoyed like bargaining, contract negotiations. So I had done some research study on that. And again, I very much enjoyed it. I don't think the people necessarily that read it enjoyed it as much as I did. It's kind of a dry topic. But no, I very much enjoyed it right at UMass Lowell. So
Wow.
I did it locally.
I'm going to guess that particular field of study at that level is probably not that common, I would guess.
No, there were a few different
Yeah.
studies, prior studies that took
Yeah.
a look at from like different angles. I looked at it from the angle of the school superintendent and then the union president. So looking at it from those two different angles and exactly what goes into bargaining. We look specifically at Massachusetts school districts that had been leveled as unperforming by the state to figure out what actually they went in as part of their turnaround plans, what actually had the biggest impact, ultimately long-term on student achievement. So that was something that interested me at the time. At the time, I was also working in Lowell, which was more of an urban district, and several districts had been identified by the state as underperforming. So it was a group of districts that I was very familiar with and wanted to just dig a little bit deeper to figure out, how could the contract be used kind of as a lever to improve student achievement and performance.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I liked collective bargaining after I did the first one. I was a little apprehensive about it, but I liked it. But it was from a different perspective, and because I'm process oriented,
Right.
and policy driven and all this other stuff.
Really?
Like people wouldn't know. But I remember a couple of times not the first one, obviously, because we had a different law firm.
Okay.
But once we got the current law firm, because you haven't changed it.
No, they've had the same since I've been.
Well, the school department has always had a law firm apart from town council, right?
Yes.
Separate,
They
law
don't
firm.
have to, but they always have.
I think
to
in
my
Chelmsford,
knowledge.
they always have.
Right. And so I remember, probably it could have been the second time, a third time, and whatever came up, because I knew all the other stuff and had a certain strategy and said, well, why don't we try this? And that's when Andy, the lawyer,
Yeah.
basically
Same
said, Evelyn, you just should have been a lawyer instead of going into teaching because of how you think. And it's strategic,
Yeah.
and it was kind of interesting. And I was sharing with Glenn one of the times when we did the administrator's contract and we had settled the teacher's contract, and they said, we want to have what the teachers have. I said, oh, really? Do you know everything that the teachers have? And they looked at me and I said, okay, if you want to go in that direction. So therefore, and it had to do, I think, with grandfathering in the sunset on the retirement benefits
Oh,
that was
okay.
paid out. Not the retirement from the state, but what we were doing in our budget. And then they just said no.
Are you talking about, what was that?
But we did negotiate it at one point. I don't know if
At
you
one
put it
point,
back.
wasn't it, they had a 25% bump when you got out? Is that what you're talking about? And then
Something like that, yes.
And then that was eliminated,
Yes,
yeah.
it was
Well,
grandfathered in.
It's still there for some people.
My wife got it.
Well,
when
yeah,
she-
because they're
when she
still
retired,
working.
But that was 10 years
You
ago.
had to be hired before a certain date.
Right.
And it was more of a retirement incentive, a notification incentive for the district, because it's helpful for us if staff tell us well in advance that they're going to be retiring at the end of a school year, so that we can actually then go and putting our budget together. We can take into consideration some potential savings from a retiring teacher on top step to a newer teacher coming in on the lower step of the salary grid. And it also doesn't have a scrambling at the last minute to try to fill an opening. So the incentive at the time was if you provided notice by a particular date and then you retired at the end of that school year, when you retired, you received the equivalent of 25% of your salary, whatever you earned that last year, as an incentive payment.
Now-
And then that was phased out, so you had to be hired before a particular date to have that happen. So
Right.
we still have some individuals that still qualify.
They're still qualified for that.
But a lot of the newer teachers to the district wouldn't.
Now,
Right.
what you just said brings up a question that's very interesting. Years ago, and I can remember having a conversation with one of your predecessors years ago when I was on the FinCom.
Sam,
That's okay.
important part of the
Yeah,
show.
go ahead.
So Evelyn, would you tell the audience what we have today to eat?
You
I know
have,
we're talking about the first hour.
I know that, you have cranberry orange almond bread with a glaze.
Okay, thank you. We won't be doing any announcements today. That's the
Oh, wow. Well, there you go. Okay. So.
Because
I'm going-
if you can hear in the background, you have the alarm for the announcements at
There you go.
7:20.
I'm going back 25 years now.
Okay.
And the superintendent at the time actually told me, and I was surprised that he said it, he said, really, it's part of our planning and strategy that when the retirees go out, and to your point, they're at the top of their salary scale at that point, he said, we actually try to get first-time teachers or near first-time teachers because it's quite a budget saving when we hire these people. And I thought, well, I guess that makes sense as long as they're qualified. I mean, that obviously is the first criteria. You want to get good qualified people in. But I guess my question is, if you do decide you're doing a replacement, if you do hire an experienced teacher from another system, let's say they have 25 years, and are they brought in at the top level, or do you start them somewhere else? How does that work?
No, so it's always a negotiation if
Okay.
someone comes from the outside, but you do take into consideration the years of service that they have teaching in a particular field or under a particular license. What typically happens for us, because we're in the middle of budgeting right now, we have just found over the years that if we budget for any vacant teacher that we have at the master's step 3 level,
Okay.
then on averaging, it typically works out, and I can work the budget. So when
Makes
you
sense.
yeah, when you advertise a position, if someone, most retirees are on the top step, so they're on step 10. But if they go out, we do very much look for the very best individual that we can hire for the particular job based on the candidate pool that we have. So if we do have an individual that comes with a great deal of experience and they're highly qualified and highly credentialed, I don't have a problem hiring them and paying them on top step if they're going to bring that talent to the district. So that would be potentially a step 10 hire. Oftentimes,
But
those
that's
people-
not the norm.
It's
though.
not the norm. People
Okay.
don't really change districts like that because once you get into a school district, you have seniority, you have selection of, in some districts you can kind of select which classes you teach, which grades you work at. Let's say you're at the high school level. You also have different protection rights as far as status go within school systems. So there are not, usually when someone comes like that, it's because of physical move. If someone relocated to the area and they happen
Okay.
to have service. But you don't typically find a teacher, a senior teacher in, Lowell, Drake, or Tewksbury wanting to just transfer to Chelmsford for the sake of transferring.
Have you ever had teachers, though, transfer or administrators? Because a long time ago, way before I was on the school committee, if there was an issue, we'll put that in quotes, the teacher had the option of being fired or leaving. And a lot of times they would resign, but they would go work in another system. But all of that was confidential, so nobody knew what the issues were. Or not you personally, but you figuratively speaking, would move them around. So there's possibilities that can also happen. But I will agree with you that people coming in that have a lot of years usually are coming in because they moved for some
Right.
reason. Could be their husband had a job or their wife had a job that needed to, that changed.
Right.
And that's what you and I have probably seen the most of. Usually once you're in a system, you just stay there for life.
Yeah, if you like it, sure.
I think that's why the hiring process and the screening process is so important. That, it is not common for someone, say, on top step to transfer from, say, Westford to Chelmsford or something like that. So usually when you get to the point you have that type of a candidate coming in, you do give it an extra look to figure out exactly what are the reasons that they want to come.
Good.
When you're doing your background checks on the individuals, you need to check prior references. You need to kind of figure out if there's a real true story as to why they may want to be transferring, because it's just not commonplace. Again, it makes total sense if a family relocates from, Colorado to Massachusetts, and, the person has experience. But usually you don't see a lot of movement just within, say, the Merrimack Valley from one school system to another. Now, it will happen if you're looking to, say, get into like an administrative role, because oftentimes if you're a teacher, you've got a lot of experience as a teacher, you've then gone to get additional licensing to be, say, an assistant principal or a department coordinator or something like that. Your district that you're working in may just not have an opening, or you may not have an opening in the foreseeable future just because of the age of the individuals in the jobs. So that might necessitate you to take a look at going to a neighboring district. But that would be more commonplace, is if there wasn't an administrative opening and you really wanted to move into administration, that you might have to consider jumping a school district. But it doesn't happen too much on the teaching side.
Yes, John?
Jay, cell phones are likely never going to go away. They're going to be here until the sun burns out. What are your thoughts on using it as an educational tool? Every kiddo has a cell phone. It's a braggable thing, like I had pointy shoes when I was in high school. If you didn't have pointy shoes, you weren't cool. Nowadays, all these kids have a cell phone. From an administration, and have you guys collectively, other superintendents, considered using the cell phone as a tool for learning?
Yeah, it's actually it's a hot topic, because there are a lot of school systems that have actually moved to, because they can be a distraction in schools, so they've moved to kind of banning them.
So are girls and boys.
Yeah, but it's an extra device, right, in the classroom that just takes away the attention of kids. I think the phones these days as well, they're not just a regular phone.
They're
But
computers.
they're wired to the internet. They have camera functionality. They do cause problems in schools. We're taking a look at policy right now. We don't actually have a great deal of policies around cell phone use in the buildings. We have more guidelines. And basically, our guidelines just call for cell phones, at the elementary level, it's honestly not a problem. Our elementary kids don't have cell phones by and large. At the middle school level is when kids typically start to get cell phones, and then obviously the high school level. At the middle school level, they hold pretty tight to, you certainly can have a cell phone, but please power it off during the day and leave it in your bag or leave it in your locker. It's not to be out during class time unless it's something the teacher actually asks you to do.
But since they're never going to go away,
Yeah.
and I use my cell phone, I can say to my cell phone, how tall was Abraham Lincoln? And it will instantly tell me. Have you guys thought about using it as an educational tool? Right now, it's forbidden, put it away, don't use it.
It can be an educational tool if the teacher says, go ahead and use your cell phone. But all of our kids,
Does that ever happen?
well, all of our kids have laptops in front of them, because we're a one-to-one district.
Right.
So every child has a computer in front of them, so they wouldn't need to go on their phone to access the internet to ask for whatever question you just asked. They could use the computer. But I will tell you, like when it gets to certain classes at the not quite so much at the middle school level, more so at the high school level. Yeah, there are teachers that will have different apps and things like that they'll work with the kids on. There are different little quiz type applications you can use as well. But when we move to a one-on-one device policy in the district, and every child has a computer with them, most of the technology is just being driven through the device in front of them.
I learned, of course, having grandchildren in the system, I'm learning all the time about the changes. This is not 1955 when I was in elementary school, that's for sure. And my
The building's the same.
Yep, good. Yeah, some of them are. My oldest granddaughter, who is in the 6th grade, she's at Parker, and she's pretty studious. She likes school and so forth, but her math and science, our homework almost is exclusively on the computer. And I find that very interesting. And the teacher will post the assignments, and it's up to the student, to actually proactively access the assignment and do it. And, at first when I saw her doing that, I thought, I don't know. But the more I watched it, I was pretty intrigued by that. And the only problem she's had is a couple of times, I think that the teacher that she has is trying to see if the kids are paying attention or not. And sometimes, one time, she said, he didn't post the assignment until 8 o'clock. She said, that's my bedtime. And I said, yeah, that could be a problem. But then I found out later that, and I'm not denigrating the teacher here, folks,
Yeah.
please don't misunderstand me. The teacher had a specific reason for doing what he did, and it was, I think, a good reason. But I'm just intrigued by that whole process. And you almost find myself looking at that saying, boy, I wish I'd had that. When I was a kid, and it's just, they can get so much more material in front of the kid, and the teacher, it seems to me, and again, you can speak to this because I don't know how the programs are generated, but it just seems to me that the teacher will have a lot more flexibility, maybe in some of the sourcing that he can or she can choose to put in front of the kid. And I understand it has to be consistent with whatever the curriculum guidelines are, but it's just so much more robust in terms of the material that they're able to look at. That's my takeaway. Am I wrong in any of that?
Well, we had really done kind of a jump start. We had to
Yeah.
when COVID hit in
Yes.
2020.
Yes.
We had to move to remote learning. Some teachers were already very much using computers and technology and had a lot of instruction that was available online. If you didn't, you had to very quickly get there. And so as a district, we use a lot of Google products, but we use Google Classroom, which allows each of the teachers to basically have an online platform where they can post assignments, they can post their lessons, the kids can access right from the site the different curriculum materials that they have, and that really forced us as a district to do that. So a lot of our teachers over 2020 to 2022, when they were working, were really kind of building out their online classrooms
They had
of
to.
all of their different resources
Yeah.
because they had to.
Right.
But now they actually have all of the materials online and they're all available anyway. So as a teacher, if I'm teaching a unit this fall on whatever, the following fall when I go back to teach that, I'm going to look at how it went. I might make some tweaks and modifications, and I'm going to use a lot of that same content as I'm doing my teaching. Well, now it's all available online, so it just rolls over for the teacher to the following year, and they're able to go in and customize and add and subtract and things like that, materials. But it's readily available for the student, and then the student, whether they're at home or they're at school, I couldn't tell you how many times as a kid I forgot something at school, and then
Oh, yeah.
had to call a friend or something like that to get an assignment. Well, now you don't have to, because all you have to do is be able to get to an internet, whether it's your home computer or your student computer. You can just log into your Google site and have access to all your materials. It's just
yeah.
a different way of doing things.
I think it's great, and of course, we got quite the education, as you say, during COVID, because
Right.
my wife and I were kind of in charge of that whole, education thing, and thank God my wife was an elementary school teacher for 40 years, so she, not sure we could have got through, but I was absolutely blown away at how quickly the Chelmsford school system was able to gear up for that whole remote learning. And now, to your point, some of the teachers probably already were there somewhat,
Right.
but a lot weren't. And it was just phenomenal. And I remember the second or third day we had the kids, and they were going through their lessons. And I said to one of my grandchildren, I said, well, at least you don't have to go to gym. And she said, oh, you think so, huh? She says, we have gym online. I said, I can't wait to see that one.
Yeah.
And they actually did. And I was very impressed. That even to that level, something like a gym class, phys ed, they were able to, to do that. And so I was just quite impressed with the teaching staff, and I know that the administration and you had a lot to do with that. We're able to pivot so quickly and do that and make sure that the thing was as comprehensive as it could be with regard to if kids were physically there.
Right.
I was
No,
just
that's a
blown
complete-
away by that.
Yeah, complete credit to the
Yeah.
teachers at the time. They kind of changed on a dime and had
Yes.
to come up with a different way of teaching. It was very difficult, early on, particularly, if you're an elementary school teacher and as your wife was, to be able to kind of corral 20 kids in the classroom in person is one thing, but to have little screens popping up and
Yep.
popping down, it was crazy. And then we got into, for the second year, we started to introduce some in-person schooling again, so we called it kind of hybrid learning. So you might have half of your class in person and half of your class was online. That was a challenge.
That's even more difficult, I think.
But but the teachers really did an outstanding job of I think just maintaining the relationships with the kids during
Yes.
that time was key. The contact, the kids wanted to go online to do, again, whether it was regular classroom instruction, our specialists did a nice job putting together special projects for kids and things like that, but it was maintaining the relationships between the students and the staff, the continuity and schedule for kids, because I remember when I was home during COVID, the days just didn't seem like they ended. I felt like I woke up in the morning and I was working, and next thing you know, it's bedtime and I'm going to bed for the night. To actually have some kind of structured schedule, I think helped families a little bit, but I'm very happy we're past that.
Yeah,
But at
thank
the
God.
time, a lot of the things that we built out still persist. And one of the things was, as you mentioned, like the Google Classrooms, and being able to have access to all of our instructional materials online has been something that's grown. Sometimes it is difficult for parents because parents, weren't educated in that kind of a fashion, but it's all the kids have ever known. So the kids are very comfortable using the technology.
Yes.
And it's really kind of helping the parents get up to speed with how to use it to help them support their kids.
And
Well, there's a couple of different other, we're going to run out of time here, just to cover. One is the budget. So we have a budget shortfall, and you have, I don't know if,
projected budget shortfall.
it's going to be challenging.
You gotta think positive, Evelyn.
Yeah.
All of the years, 18 of all those years that I was on the school committee, we always had budget issues. It wasn't pleasant in terms of setting priorities and what you do, what you don't do. I think that the current town manager has tried very hard to make sure that there's plenty of money to support, but at some point, you're going to have to reduce, cut, rearrange, be creative. You have at least a couple of your school committee members that don't want to do any of it. So what is your strategy with regard to the upcoming budget?
So we're in the middle of working budget now, and the only thing I would say is I don't think it's necessarily the school committee members don't want to do it or to cut anything. I think they just want to go through the process and actually take a look at exactly, what is the actual numbers that we're going on, because as Sam mentioned, everything is projected at this point in time. Yesterday, the governor, I believe, had kind of the state of the state address. I think it conflicted with the president's address, so I want to spend a little bit of time today kind of watching that to figure out exactly what they're going to be earmarking related to schools, so that'll be interesting to find out. Next Wednesday is really a big day for municipalities and school systems because by statute, the state budget has to come out. So next Wednesday, the state budget will come out, and then within about 24 hours, the cherry sheets, as they're called, will come out. So by Thursday, we'll actually have a sense of exactly what local aid is going to look like. So we have, Chapter 70 is the big number for schools. But I also worry about other accounts, like is the state going to recommend fully funding circuit breaker, which is
Right.
a big special ed cost for us. What are they going to do with that? Are they going to make any changes to, school choice, charter tuition, reimbursement, things like that? So I've got to kind of dig into the school numbers. At the same time, the town manager will be taking a look at the municipal aid numbers, and typically there's one big pot for unrestricted kind of municipal aid, and we have to see what happens with that. So those are the two big revenue numbers that are just unknown at this point. I think the town manager and obviously the different town departments have done a good job of projecting kind of locally what's going to be available to support revenue when it's new growth in taxes and things like that. So the only real numbers that are kind of unknown at this point in time are those two revenue numbers. On the expense side, we're still going to be, kind of fine-tuning expenses between now, right through June, even the start of the fiscal year. You have to, at some point in time, just go with the budget number. And so we're obviously going to be doing that before the end of January. But a couple of the numbers that we know that are going to be drivers for the budget were contributions to the retirement system. the Middlesex retirement system, but that's now a hard number. We don't have a final number on health insurance rates for next year, so that's another number that can be kind of a budget buster. So I know Paul is working to try to kind of refine that. So the town manager and I will work between now and the last week in January to try to come to some consensus on what the recommended budget for town meeting should be. We've worked very closely over the last 10 years. I think, again, budgets have been tight. I think this is going to be just a particularly tight year for us in town. At the time we had our tri-board meeting in December, the town manager was estimating about a $2.5 million shortfall in overall, town-wide, in overall funding. So that's something that we obviously have to sit down and figure out how we're going to handle. I think, the timing is difficult for both the town and the school side because we have upcoming and ongoing negotiations with our different employee unions. So you're trying to settle a budget, also have some money set aside for what are ultimately going to be contract raises. So it is just kind of a challenging time, but the town manager and I have been working on that. I'm hopeful that by the time this ends, when we see the actual the final numbers of estimates from the state next Wednesday. Again, that's still not the end deal. You have to wait for it to go through the House and Senate and whatnot. But just historically, the lowest numbers have come from the governor's budget. So it typically only goes up from there.
And under state law, just so that the viewers understand this, under state law, at the time that you move forward with your budget for your town meeting session, okay, we have to have a balanced budget by state law, okay, so we're not allowed to go in with a deficit situation. Understanding that when the town meeting passes the budget in April, it is still technically a preliminary budget because adjustments are always made in the fall, okay, so, but the mentality is you are supposed to act and proceed as if this is your final budget.
Correct.
Even though you can make some adjustments later on, so people should understand that. But my observation has been, you said 10 years, it's hard for me to fathom that
this is
you've
my
been here
10th
for
year,
10
yeah.
years. But you and the town manager have always had what appears to me to be a very collaborative relationship when it comes to approaching the budget situation and other things too. I mean, it isn't just that you get together during this time of the year. You work together throughout the year, and it's always seems to me to have been a very positive relationship, and that's not the case in many cities and towns. It's much more of an adversarial thing because the structure by its nature is adversarial. So the school department, unlike other states, is not a taxing authority. They can't raise their own revenue. In Massachusetts, the school has to ask the municipality for the money. So it is sort of a collaborative and negotiating process, and it can get very contentious at times, but, and then Evelyn and I both remember times when it was very contentious, and a lot of it was due to the personalities of both the superintendent and the town manager.
Well, it also had to do with who was on the different boards and.
Well, that's
and
also
there's
true. That's also
different
true.
relationships, political and otherwise, with regard to that. But you also have, I don't know if there's grants. Since we're talking money, you have a president that wants to get rid of the Board of Education, as far as the federal thing goes, or reduce it quite a bit. But how much money do we get from the federal government in Chelmsford? Not Massachusetts necessarily, but I know that it can go from Washington, D.C. to Massachusetts and then to districts. So do you know about that part of the finances? I figure you do, but I mean, I'm just going to.
So the question
I
is
hope you have
currently,
a little idea, Evelyn.
I'm sure he knows
Not
the
but a lot of
numbers.
an idea.
So the question is currently, not projectedly, but currently, what percentage roughly of the budget is direct federal subsidy?
Oh, it's not when you look at overall percentage-wise, it's not significant.
Very small.
You'd be,
Yeah.
a percent,
Right.
maybe 1.25%, something along those lines. I don't know what's going to happen federally. I mean, there's a lot of talk about
Mike.
different things that could happen. I know there was
Push the
discussion
mic
about
towards Jay. No, it has to be closer to you.
Oh,
Yeah, like
Closer,
this.
closer.
See,
There
like
you go.
this? See,
Is that better?
like,
Yeah, perfect.
not this part,
That's
this
good.
part.
Oh,
We're
that
good, we're
part.
good, we're
This
good,
part
we're
has
good,
to be.
we're good.
There you go.
Okay. Like say eliminating the Department of Education at the federal level. So like that had been discussed, would it ever happen, would it not happen? These things are going to take some time. They're not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But there hadn't been discussion necessarily about eliminating the funding. It was just eliminating the step where it basically stops at the federal Department of Education before it goes to the state Department of Education, because it keeps kind of getting watered down as it gets out to the individual districts. So on our, like, Title I is the biggest number. It's a federal number that we get. It's approximately $400,000 this year of Title I funding. We use that to hire some interventionists in the schools that will help, like tutoring type positions, extra staff to go in and work with some students who might be struggling in reading or math, to help cut down a little bit on ratios of numbers, do some pull-out instruction. That's a big one for us. We get a much smaller amount of Title III, fund some professional development. We have some ELL funding that we receive, but again, in the scheme of things, it's probably about 1% of our overall budget.
Okay,
So
that's good
it's
to
not
know.
it's not a significant number. I'm not overly worried about the federally what's going to happen.
And to your point, I mean, the discussion politically, now, the discussion about the Department of Education, people have to remember that prior to 1978 or 79, there was not a cabinet-level standalone Department of Education that was created in the Carter administration. But prior to that, it was at that same level because it was incorporated in the cabinet-level position of health, education, and welfare. So it came under that. So we've always had, if you hear the Trump people, we've always had a cabinet-level Department of Education. It's just that we didn't have a standalone one until Carter created that position. So my guess is the political rhetoric notwithstanding, you are still going to have a relatively substantial presence at the cabinet level in some form, and to Dr. Lang's point, even if, and I don't really believe this is true, but even if the goal is to ultimately eliminate the thing, that remains to be seen, whether that can even be done, or if it can be, it's going to take a long time.
Well, I think that things can be reduced, but that's a conversation for another day,
That's-
because
and
what we're
I
trying to
think
do is
that's
just
the
focus
point.
on
I think that's the
what
point.
benefits
Right.
us.
Right.
Now, but where there's so many different things that people want to focus on, and right now we're focused on education, does the federal government Department of Education tell Massachusetts and all the other 49 states and everything exactly what curriculum should be? My understanding
Good
is
question.
that there may be certain policies out there, but that the implementation of the policies is individual to the districts, whether it's a county or it's individual like it is in Massachusetts. So if you take a few minutes for that, because I do want to get to the building project.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like selection of curriculum, materials, things along those lines, those have all been local decisions. So like Chelmsford gets to pick, the state will put out guidelines, or the state will put out rubrics talking about what, statewide curriculum needs to address. But then the individual district gets to select product A or product B or product C, whatever's going to best suit the staff and the students of the district. I don't necessarily think that will change because, again, a lot of it could just be rhetoric too, but it almost seems like what some people are talking about is, cutting out some of the regulations or the red tape that goes with these to actually have it be more local control as opposed to having different restrictions put on the funding before it gets to the state. So I don't see that ever getting any real different for us. Massachusetts does have a very robust system of standards and curriculum, when things should be taught, how it should be taught, but they've always left local control to the actual curriculum products that are selected. So I don't see that changing. I'm
Good to
honestly
hear.
I'm not concerned about
Good
that.
to hear.
Now, was it the federal government or was it the state government that basically said you don't need cursive to be taught in school?
Well, we actually do have cursive in third grade. There's still a unit we do on cursive. Kids obviously these days just don't write cursively. I'd be happy if they could actually just sign their name with an actual signature instead of.
Well, maybe
instead of
that's something
printing.
to practice when you have,
Yeah, there are teachers
as an
that do that.
outcome.
Like I said,
We're,
they do have that.
we're teaching the kids.
But most kids at this point in time, again, because of the technology world we're in, are typing. And most of the stuff that they do is actually typewritten as opposed to even print written.
But you have to learn it, because at some point you may have to read documents that are written that way. So it's important at least to have the
well, we also
knowledge,
found
right.
last year during election season is that you had someone that was in the town offices that couldn't read signatures, so you had to print them. When you have something like that,
was
that's
fine.
that's an obstacle. There's also a lot of study out there on the benefits of cursive because of what it does between what you do here and what you do here, and the thought process, and it takes time to do it, and so there's a lot of benefit by it in terms of the educational value of it, and it isn't just communication to you or
Urgent
to
alert.
Budget
Sam.
in for 1 second. We got the town of Tewksbury. There's a water main break at 31 Allen Road.
Ooh,
And 31 Allen
not good.
Road is right here. So just so you know, it's way off Main Street. So just FYI from the town of Tewksbury. Back to you, Evelyn.
Not
I want
good.
to ask Jay. Jay, what's going to replace the MCAS test? You have any plans for what we're still going to? I'm told we're still going to do the MCAS test. What are your plans for Chelmsford?
Yeah, the MCAS test is not going away, so we're still going to be administering the MCAS test. The only thing that we need to do internally is figure out the MCAS test can't be the only determining factor for a student reaching their competency determination
Diploma?
to graduate for high school.
Yeah.
So we're actually kind of figuring out exactly what we're going to do with that. We're going to have a short-term solution because for Chelmsford, most of our kids honestly pass the MCAS, so we only have, I think, 5 or 6 students at the high school who did not pass the MCAS, and a couple of those are actually because they were kids that relocated, from other states to Chelmsford, so they never would have taken the
So I'm going to
MCAS.
take it down as a work in progress. So page 2.
Work in progress, short-term.
Kiddos that can't read, how do they get into the 4th grade? And is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, I mean, kids do read by the 4th grade. I think it's a matter of like what reading level they're on, where they're at. Do they receive extra reading services? Are they identified for any kind of special education programs, things along those lines? But we, again, have different screeners. I can only speak for Chelmsford, but we have different screeners that figure out and kind of benchmark where students' reading is to where it should be. And if they are not where they should be on grade level, then there are those interventionists I talked about would kick in and provide extra services. If it goes even deeper than that, it could be like an underlying special education issue. So there'd be a whole other array of services for the kids.
So just to follow
The
up
parents are still the paramount decision maker whether the kid's going to stay back or not. Do any kids stay back?
We don't have a significant number of kids that stay back, but it's actually the teachers that decide if the kids stay back, not the parents.
The parents have no say?
They have a say, but they're not the final say.
Understood. Thank you.
So just to follow up on John's question, so based on what you just described, it is highly, highly unlikely that a student starting in the 1st grade in Chelmsford would get all the way to high school without knowing how to read. That's practically an
In
impossible.
Chelmsford.
In Chelmsford, that's practically an impossibility.
Yes, you can't speak for other districts
Yeah, I
because.
can't speak for other districts, but I mean,
No,
I
I
wouldn't
understand.
think that that's the norm in other districts
Right.
either. I mean, you have to look at the individual students who you're talking
And
about.
I
but-
can speak to what Dr. Lang just said because, my middle grandchild had some difficulty with the reading by 2nd grade, and they jumped right in and they assessed that, and she got the assistance, and she's in the 4th grade now, and she's reading perfectly. She's reading at the level, so it does work. I'm very
You
grateful
guys got
for
6
that.
minutes just to
Yeah.
FYI.
Very grateful for that.
So we have a potential building project in Chelmsford. It's moving quite along in a positive way, and that is to replace Parker Middle School. You have a building committee. Who's on the building committee? How was it chosen? Are you going to expand it? Is it going to change in any capacity? So if you could kind of address that part and some of the timeline. I know some of the stuff personally, but I'm asking you to share that. please.
So we did. So a year ago in December, so December 23, our statement of interest was actually accepted by the MSBA, and we were invited into what's called the eligibility period, which was a year-long process. We had to provide all different data, analysis, enrollment projections to the Mass School Building Authority. Ultimately, we also had to go to the town meeting. We went last April to have them approve $1.8 million to be spent to hire an owner's project manager, an OPM, and a designer to come up with concepts for our different designs. So we were originally slated to go to the MSBA board meeting in February to move from eligibility to feasibility, but we finished all of our milestones early, and we actually got invited in December to go to feasibility for Parker Middle School. So that was great. We actually got a 2-month head start on some other districts by getting all of our milestones met early. During feasibility, what we're in right now is the town has formed a school building committee specific for Parker. It's a 13-member committee made up of employees of the town and also some residents of the town that hold different positions. It's a very prescribed list of individuals that have to be on the building committee by the MSBA. So just a couple of examples. I know I'm going to forget someone, but like the school superintendent has to be on the school building committee. The town manager has to be on the school building committee. A representative of the finance committee has to be on the school building committee. The person responsible for public buildings in town, which is Christine Clancy, the DPW director, has to be on the school building committee. So there are all of these different people by title and position that just had to be on the committee. We also had a resident who works as a DPW type director in another town, who was very involved in school building projects in his other town, was very interested in being part of this. He's a resident. He's on our building committee.
That's
good. Again, I could get you the names of the 13 people, but that 13 people group is going to be kind of an advisory oversight group to, first we have to hire an owner's project manager. So that's going to be our agent at the table during this whole process. So we're actually going to be issuing the RFS, the request for services, in early February to bring an OPM on board. And we hope to have that OPM on board by the end of April, so that between May and probably July, we would then advertise to bring a designer on board. So once the summer comes, we have a signed OPM, we have a signed designer. What will end up happening is we'll spend next school year looking through the 3 different options that they're allowing us to look at. One is just a 1-for-1 replacement of Parker, a 2-grade level school for 5 and 6. The second option is to incorporate a 3-grade level school, so have Parker become a 4, 5, 6. That option actually helps us with our enrollment needs at the elementary school level, because we can take the 4th grade out of the elementary buildings, incorporate them into the new space, and then that opens up space for the next 10 to 15 years at the elementary buildings. So that would be advantageous. I think that's a good option to look at. And a third option is also to basically merge both middle schools back together and create a brand new 5 to 8 building. That would be a very large middle school, but what that would do is Parker would come offline, and then McCarthy could potentially be a 5th elementary school, because we still have issues with the elementary school enrollment. So the second and third options give us some longer term help in the district as far as overall enrollment goes. And in one project, we could accomplish a lot. But we're going to need to really vet those 3 options. We're going to need to figure out under each of the 3 options, where would the facility go. One spot might not be quite big enough for the full middle school, one might be. So that is going to be a year-long process next school year to get to that point, with our ultimate goal of the following fall, so this would be the fall of 26, of bringing a recommendation to town meeting and likely having a town-wide vote for some type of a debt exemption, debt exclusion, to potentially fund whichever option we recommend at the time.
How does the permanent building committee work into this?
So they actually have a rep that, again, by title, they had to have a representative from the Permanent Building Committee on the School Building Committee, and they're going to be an intermediary going back and forth. Most of the, because there were extra individuals from the school department and the school committee that are on there, typically the town's Permanent Building Committee would not be the school building committee for this project. There are also just a lot of meetings that are involved with this, even outside of what the Permanent Building Committee would meet on. So that intermediary person will be the go-between to keep the Permanent Building Committee up to date with what the school building committee is doing with Parker, and vice versa. If there's anything, we have to go back and forth with the town building.
So it's up
Permanent
to,
Building
so
Committee
for
on.
the committee representative, it's up to the individual committee, presumably the chair of those committees, to make the designation as to who.
Yeah, ultimately, they had to make a recommendation, and the town manager, as the appointing authority.
Okay.
Ultimately, Paul had to appoint, or make a recommendation to the select board to appoint the 13 different individuals.
So it's a select board appointed committee?
Based on the town manager's recommendation.
Okay, so the town manager is the appointing authority, the select board have to approve the
Yeah.
appointments, okay.
Okay, we're running out of time. Thank you very much for
Yes, I
being
was
here.
sorry
We
for
look
being a
forward
few
to the
minutes
next.
late today, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
coming.
but you are here.
Thank
You
you.
are here.
Content.
Yeah, and but we want to thank you very much for
No,
coming.
happy to-
There was a
happy
lot
to
of
be here.
information. So if anybody's listening, you should save up all your questions for the next time that you come, and
Or we
let
could
us
do
know
a
what they are.
sequel on my show, I don't.
Oh, well, that's true. That's usually what happens
Good,
from this
good.
point. So thanks, Sam, for getting up extra early this morning, and we hope everybody will stay safe. And we'll see you next week. Not necessarily Jay, but we'll be here. You take care. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for watching.
Goodbye.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.